Hi, Adeline.
Hi.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be on this edition of Fizz and Tell. And I can't wait to just touch base with you and unravel your journey because your journey's been really rather remarkable. And first of all, introduce yourselves to our audience.
So I'm Adeline. I'm nearly 50 and mum of two teenagers, mum of four cats, wife, and I now work as a yoga teacher and a personal trainer. I started that about 3 years ago. It's quite a big career change for me. Prior to that, I had a very high profile London based job. I was working for a big American tech company as a marketing director. And I guess on the surface, I had it all. I had the job, I had the husband, the family, nice house, nice car. But I lived most of my life as a stress ball. I was constantly wound up. I didn't sleep as well as I would like to. My alarm went off at 5:15 every morning, and I had to jump out of bed to get the train. And yeah, I just got to the point where I felt completely overwhelmed, and knew something had to give.
And you almost become a slave to the alarm, don't you, when you're working in that type of environment, when you're in town and you have these high power jobs. What do you think it was that made you, was there one of those moments that just made you think, right, enough is enough. I need to change my life?
I don't think it was. So for me, it wasn't that I made the decision. It was almost that the decision was made for me. And there'd been a number of clues along the way. So I drifted into doing what I did. I originally wanted to be a diplomat and I didn't get a good enough degree. So I sort of drifted into this career path. Um, and I think as a teenager, my aspirations were quite limited. I wanted a nice car, bit of travel, and to have a job that had a bit of kudos. So that's why I felt like I'd got there, but I wasn't happy. Um, and yes, I absolutely was a slave to the alarm. But I think the thing that I was more of a slave to was my BlackBerry. So every time my BlackBerry went off, I
That
would
good old
almost have a
BlackBerry.
I would almost have a panic attack, and I hear them still, or at least I hear that alarm, and it sends shivers down my spine. It's got to be the worst noise in the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there had been some really clear signals to me that all was not well. So for a long time, I had quite a bad recurring shoulder pain, which meant that using a mouse was difficult for me, and I had to teach myself to use a mouse on my left hand. And I just thought, oh my, I've got a problem with my shoulder. I'll just get on with it. Um, and then back in 2014, I had a bad back. I got to the stage I couldn't easily get out of bed. I had to get my husband to kind of hoist me out of bed. Couldn't bend over and touch my toes. He had to help me put my socks and my tights on. And again, I was mid-30s. I didn't really think it through and think, well, hold on a moment, what is causing this
Mm.
to happen? Um, and that was quite a pivotal moment for me. I went to see an osteopath and he said, look, you need yoga. And I said, don't be ridiculous. I don't do yoga. That's something that, is a pretentious name for stretching. I'm not doing yoga. I do hit and spin. How can you fix me so I can get back on my treadmill, metaphorical and actual treadmill? And he said, look, you need yoga. Borrow this DVD. Have a look at it. And I borrowed this DVD, and there were two people on there. One who was probably in their 30s, and there was a chap who must have been in his 70s. And he could get, I won't demo, but he could get his
Yeah.
leg behind his head. And I watched it and I felt my
Oh,
jaw
please
dropping.
demonstrate it, Adeline.
Oh, I can't. I felt my jaw dropping and I was like, that's what I want. I want to be as fit and flexible as that in my 70s. So I took up yoga and that helped get my flexibility back. It kind of it patched me up and sent me back into corporate world. Um, but I think you're right. Going back to the alarm clock, it was almost like every time the alarm clock went, I could immediately feel myself sort of clenching
Yeah.
up. But still, I think in my head, this is what I'd aimed for. I'd aimed for this good job, this nice car, this good salary. So there must have been something wrong with me. Um, and then fast forward a little bit, right at the beginning of COVID, I got made redundant. And that proved to be such a blessing in disguise. I spent a couple of weeks lying on the sofa drinking and feeling really sorry for myself. Um, what am I going to do? I'm in my 40s now. Marketing's quite an interesting field to be in, because when I came into marketing, um, you did everything. You wrote copy, you organized events, you did adverts, you might build a website or work with someone to build a website, but you basically did everything. And then over the last 10, 15, 20 years, marketing's become so segmented that you've got specialists in SEO and social media and AdWords and blog copy and things like that. So I was already beginning to feel that my skills were lacking, or I couldn't keep up with, 20 somethings who were completely on top of digital technology. So I was lying on the sofa, feeling sorry for myself, drowning my sorrows. And I had a light bulb moment about 2 weeks in. And it was almost like, I don't know if you've ever played Knock Knock Runaway when you were little, you'd kind of run up, ring a doorbell, and then run away and like have a giggle to yourself. It was almost like
I was
that. It was
always
like,
too
oh,
scared to do that.
well, that was the thing. I was like, oh, do I dare? What
Mm,
if everyone thinks I'm crazy? What?
yeah.
I'm in my 40s. Is going into fitness, is that the right thing for me? How will my body cope? Do I have enough longevity in front of me to do this until retirement? Um, and I almost parked all of those thoughts, and I just went, you know what? If I don't do it now, I won't ever do it. And it may well be too late in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time. And I threw myself into it and haven't really looked back. And I have to say, I absolutely love what I do. I love working with people. I don't have that, I don't have those feelings, I guess, imposter syndrome. Am I good enough? Will
Yeah.
people judge my work? I just don't have that, because I think my love for what I do shines through.
And
So
it does, Adeline. It's brilliant.
oh,
And,
thank you.
when I've seen you in the gym, it's like, because I'm so used to seeing you from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, yeah.
We've done marketing stuff together years ago. And it's really lovely to see someone who's embraced a career change in midlife
Mm-hmm.
and done it so well. I mean, how you talk about the drinking and you sat there and you just drowned yourself for a few days. And I know you talk about sobriety and what that actually means to you. Was it at that moment you also decided to stop drinking?
I think they pretty much did run concurrently. I realized I realized that if I was going to go into fitness, waking up with a hangover, and you know what it's like as a middle-aged woman, alcohol has such a bigger impact on you in your 40s and 50s than it does in your 20s. It takes 3 days to get over a hangover. So I think I was conscious that if I was going to go into fitness and be reliable, I probably had to cut right back on drinking. Um, it took me 7 years to stop drinking. So I had said I was going to stop when I was 40, and I actually stopped when I was 47. So it did take me that long to get to a point where I could step away from alcohol, and say, do you know what? That doesn't have a place in my life anymore, and I'm okay with that. So it wasn't. I don't think it was that I made a conscious decision. I'm going to change career and I'm going to stop drinking. It was that circumstances came along and presented me with an opportunity to pivot in my career and to give up alcohol.
Have you missed the alcohol?
Have I missed it?
Because there's social occasions, there's
Yeah.
weddings, there's all of those things where people hand you a drink. How do you
Do you know
handle
what?
that?
I think it's really important to separate out what you miss. So I miss the taste of alcohol. I mean, nothing beats a good Pinot Noir, nice full-bodied glass of red wine. But for me, alcohol was always a problem. I used it as a crutch so that I didn't have to deal with emotional stuff. And I read a brilliant book by a guy called William Porter, Alcohol Explained, and he's very left brain. He's a lawyer, so he approaches it from a very pragmatic perspective. And he says, look, it's madness to feel that emotional turmoil, to have a glass of wine, to not feel the emotional turmoil. And then the next day, wake up and you still have all that emotional crap to deal with, but you've got a hangover as well. And that to me was that penny drop moment. I was like, I'm a I'm a smart woman. What am I doing thinking that alcohol is going to cure my problems. And I think from then on, I thought I'm going to do what it takes to stop drinking. And it wasn't easy. I had to come up with strategies to do that. Um, and so do I miss it? I miss the taste of alcohol, but I don't miss using it as a crutch. I absolutely don't miss waking up with a hangover. Some of the delights that I experience of being sober are knowing that I can leave a party at any time and be home in my bed and wake up feeling great the next day. Knowing that I'm always going to have a good night's sleep. So I had got to the stage, I feel almost embarrassed to admit it, but why not? I'd got to the stage where I would go to bed with a pint of water and 2 paracetamols, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd take a sleeping tablet to get back to sleep. So not only was I waking up the next morning full of pharmaceuticals I had to take to enable me to sleep, but I had a hangover as well. So it was yes, I miss the taste of some drinks, but I don't miss everything else attached to my alcohol journey.
And when you're out socially, what's your go-to drink now?
What's my go-to drink? There are some brilliant fake gins. I mean, once you've dressed up one of these
Really?
fake gins, yes, absolutely. There are
And you can
loads
still
of
have the
them.
glass, you can still make it look beautiful.
Yes, so my local pub, it does these beautiful Bombay sapphire glasses. They're like that, they're goblets. So you have a couple of shots of the fake gin, you get them to put a bit of lemon in, maybe some strawberries, ice, and then some nice tonic. And it feels the same.
Yeah.
Um,
You can
and I
fake,
think
you
also,
can fake it without having to make it real. It can't.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think I'm more in touch with who I am. I'm naturally quite an effervescent person. And I think alcohol dulls your senses. And so having fake alcohol, you can still be that effervescent person. You don't need alcohol to change your emotional state.
And do you think, I mean, I've met and coached thousands of women, and a lot of them, when they get to their 40s and 50s, do use alcohol as a
Mhm.
crutch. They do come home and open a bottle of wine, have a glass of wine with their dinner, and by the end of the evening, the bottle's gone. And that seems to be a pattern that a lot of women, in particular, more so now, are falling into. And a lot of them, when I talk to them, are saying it's a way of just getting away from the day, from separating the day to my downtime. It helps me differentiate from work to home, just coming in and having that drink. What do you say to those women who are in that cycle and want to get out of it, but they don't know how, and they don't think it's a problem? The
Mm.
majority of people don't see that it's a problem. So two questions: how do they get out of it, and how do they recognize if they've got a problem?
So I think, first of all, the word alcoholic's a really stigmatized word.
Mm, mm.
Like to think that we are an alcoholic. So recognizing that alcohol is a problem for you is a really big thing. Um, for me, it was that recognition that I was using alcohol instead of dealing with my emotional stuff. But again, that journey of self-awareness is difficult. So I think being really self-compassionate, knowing that you're a human being and you will make mistakes, along the way, first of all. I think being realistic with yourself, if you're drinking any more than 10 units of alcohol a week, you almost certainly have a problem. Binge drinking is just as bad for your health as having 2 or 3 glasses of wine a night. So I think 10 is the absolute limit, more than that regularly. Um, and then looking at, well, what's going on for you, being really honest with yourself. What is going on for you? How can you manage those issues? If work stress is a problem, well, what can you do to manage that work stress? If parenting's difficult, what strategies can you put in place? There's so much support out there. There are so many self-help books out there to give people like you and I support getting through that journey. And then on a really practical level, think about what else you can do to unwind. So what I did, and I did this for about 4 months, because I really identify with the example that you've given of someone coming home from work and the first thing they do is kick off their heels and have a glass of wine. I had a bath every single night between 5 and 6 p.m.
How
So
lovely.
I ring fenced that time. and I would get home, go upstairs and get into the bath.
Yeah.
Um, and that helped me kind of go through that period of time that I knew was sort of my danger zone, that zone where I'd reach for a glass of wine. The other thing that I did was, and I think this was really being compassionate towards myself, I started going to bed early. So
Yeah.
so it sounds a little bit boring. So the backstory to that is I think one of the reasons, two reasons that I started drinking heavily. Um, we've had my family's always had a problem with alcohol. It's been a on my father's side, they've all been heavy drinkers. Northern Irish family, working class family, lots of drinking. So it was always a problem. And number two, my mum didn't drink, and my mum didn't really have a social life. And I remember being a teenager thinking, God, she's so boring. When I'm older and I can go out on my own, I'm going to drink, because drinking signifies having a social life and being an interesting person.
Oh,
Um, and so I had to kind of break that mindset as well. So I almost flipped it on its head and I went, look, I'm going to look after myself. So let me start having a bath every night and going to bed at 9 p.m. So I'm really gifting myself well-being. And I've rediscovered my love of reading. So I must get through a couple of paperbacks every single week. And I really love leading that life now. I feel so much healthier, so much better read, so much at peace with myself.
yeah. And how supportive, and what role did your family, your husband and your children play in this?
In sobriety.
In sobriety, and you changing your whole life. You know, you'd lost your job during COVID,
Yeah.
you decided to get sober, you went on a mission to get fit and train and teach others. You can't do that without a support network.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think the sort of relationship that I have, we are very supportive of each other. We're not obstructive, you
Yeah.
know. I think we're both quite self-sufficient people. We tap into each other when we need support, but certainly my husband's not obstructive, and he was very supportive of my sobriety journey. In fact, he barely drinks. We went through about 6 months of not having any alcohol in the house, and then he was really conscientious about buying alcohol that I didn't like. So he'll have dark rum and things like that. And I, because again, you've got to take, if you open the fridge and there's a bar of chocolate in there and chocolate's your thing,
Oh, don't.
it
Oh,
won't
you mentioned
it won't
chocolate.
stay in there long, right? So the same with me, if I've got bottles of
Mm.
gin or vodka sitting around, especially in the first year of going alcohol free, that would be a problem. So you take temptation out of your way as well. But I think, again, being a parent and knowing that you're drinking too much, and if you tune into your behavior, I knew that I was a bit more short tempered than I wanted to be. I could be quite angry, and that's not the kind of parent that I wanted to be. I want to be this parent that my kids want to talk to, and that is a good role model. And so when I looked at myself, I was falling well below the mark I'd set for myself as a parent. So that was quite a big driver to go sober. Um, and I think, both my children are teenagers. I think they're almost a new breed of teenagers that aren't bothered by alcohol. They don't like the taste. They say they're not going to drink. They can take it or leave it. And I know that things change for teenagers, but I would be very proud of them if they decided that alcohol wasn't needed in their life.
Mm.
Um, and I suppose everyone's been very proud of me, been very supportive. My kids are always saying, "Are you going to teach today, Mummy? Have you got a class? What are you doing today?" And that's quite nice as well. Whereas I think when I was going into London, what I did was a bit nebulous. They couldn't put any context around it. Whereas, we'll regularly look at YouTube videos. My son, my son used to suffer really bad anxiety, preschool anxiety on a Sunday night. So he and I were doing yoga together. So he knows about yoga. So that was quite nice to be able to deliver that to him as well.
And you found yoga, or did yoga find you? You can always. I found yoga. I discovered yoga 18 months ago, almost 2 years ago, and it certainly changed my life. It
Mhm.
gave me, I think it was one of those things that's coming out of COVID. You become reclusive. You don't, especially if you work from home, you then don't see many people. So bringing yoga into a routine and health and fitness into my daily routine gave me that excuse to get out of the house every day, have a proper routine, meet people and feel better about me, and gave me that energy to do what I needed to do. So what would you say to people who, like me 2 years ago, hadn't even got off the chair, was so focused on work? The most exercise I would do is probably going for a long walk on a Sunday with the dog across the forest. And it was terrifying. I remember walking into the yoga room the very first time thinking everyone was going to be these yoga mummies, looking all wonderful in all their yoga pants and everything else, and I just felt like a fat blob in the middle of the room thinking I've got no idea what I'm doing, I can't even touch my toes. You feel humiliated walking in there for the first time. You do. And I've spoken to other people who there's this almost this walk of shame the very first few times that you go in, feeling you don't know what you're doing. What would you say to people who are listening and thinking, yeah, I'd love to do yoga, but I'm too embarrassed, I'm too nervous, I'm fearful that people will laugh at me, or I won't be able to do it, I can't get my legs in all of those positions, I can't even bend down and touch my toes. What advice would you give to someone like me 2 years ago?
So first of all, for me, yoga comes in all shapes and sizes. And there are, we've taken something that's a very much a spiritual practice and brought it over to the West and scraped away a lot of the spiritual stuff and distilled it down to just the movement, maybe with a little bit of breath and a little bit of meditation in. And what that means is that there's lots of different varieties of yoga in the West. And the way that it's delivered, each teacher will put their own spin on it. So first of all, if you've gone to yoga and you've not got on with either the positions that you've put the body into or the teacher, don't be disheartened, try somewhere else. If you're completely new to yoga, I would probably look for somewhere that's running a beginner's course. And that will normally take the shape of either maybe a half day or maybe 6 or 8 sessions, hour-long sessions, maybe 90-minute sessions over the course of 6 to 8 weeks. And then you'll find that you'll be with others that will be in the same position as you and will almost certainly have the same worries as you. And hopefully you'll find a teacher that's really compassionate and will tap into, what your fears and concerns are and help to overcome those. For me, yoga's been, if I think about where I was sort of 9 or 10 years ago thinking about doing yoga, and having this misconception that it was only for slender, flexible people that could put
Yes.
themselves into pretzel-shaped positions. I've come on such a journey with my yoga. And, I almost don't like to say this because I don't want to put people off, but you come into yoga thinking it's good for you physically, and absolutely it is. But it's also good for up here. It's good for all of your organs. It's good for, your circulatory system, your pulmonary system. But it's good for just tapping into you. And so I guess for me, the yoga's gone hand in hand with a sobriety, because where I've had difficult stuff to deal with, I've been able to tune into yoga and just be present in the here and now and be conscious that although that stuff is there and it may evoke emotions, actually right now in this very moment, I'm okay. So I think it probably does take being brave, and it is really difficult walking into a room of strangers. Look for a beginner's course, or maybe reach out to someone. If you find someone on Instagram or maybe see a poster or something like that, reach out to someone and have some one-to-one lessons.
I was going to say, I remember looking for some one-to-one sessions at the very beginning, and that even became overbearing for me because I wasn't happy with who I was at the time. I'd gone through a divorce. I didn't feel good about me. And I think when you are in that space and you're trying, you need to do something.
Yeah.
And you're wanting to do something that is good for you. As you said, it was more, for me, the yoga was to get out. It was to do something for my body. I used to dance and I loved dancing, but my knee, I've got restrictions with my knee, so dance wasn't an option. And I was desperate to meet people after COVID actually, and feel that I belonged somewhere. So I joined the local club and found a wonderful camaraderie of women. But it's interesting because I went to one evening class. This will make you laugh, Adeline. and it was someone who was what I would call sort of an old-fashioned yogi. And
Mm-hmm.
it must have been an advanced class. And this, what you said was so right. It was my first class. I went in there, it was an advanced class, and I was so traumatized by it that when it came to the relaxation, I just fell fast asleep. And they had to wake me up at the end of it.
Oh,
Hello,
oh.
hello, we're finished now. And I can remember waking up thinking, oh my God, was I snoring? Was I dribbling? Was I talking in my sleep? And I was so embarrassed and humiliated, I couldn't go back.
Oh
And
no, that makes me so sad. So I'm very clear with my yogis that it's your practice,
yeah,
and I have no understanding of what it's like to be in your body and your head, and you need to take whatever you need from this practice. I'm your guide. And if you fell asleep in my class, I'd actually feel quite privileged that you'd felt that comfortable and that at ease.
I think I
And
was that exhausted, Adeline.
and I would recognize absolutely that that's
Yeah.
what you needed in that space and time. That's what your body needed, and that is completely okay.
Yeah. Oh no, I
Mm.
felt totally humiliated, but I did what you've suggested for other people, which is find a class that works for you.
Mhm.
And I think it's also finding a time that works for you, because I realized in the evenings I was just I was past it. It was too
Yeah,
much for me. So going in the morning and using it to energize me for the rest of the day is far more for me, it works for me.
mhm.
Whereas my best friend, she loves going at the end of the day. And I always laugh with her saying that you just go there just for a little switch off and a snooze. She says, no, I work really hard.
Well, I think we've all got different rhythms, haven't we? I mean, I'm a morning person, and so I do teach evening classes. I do see clients in the evening, but I find that quite difficult. I have to kind of dig deep and pull my energy up. And so I'm like you, I'm a morning person. But I think, we live in these central heated houses and we've got electric lights. And I think, sometimes we need to be conscious that our bodies are still stuck on this time clock, that's been set centuries ago, and yet we're trying to do things without following the rhythm of the seasons, the rhythm of the day, things like that. So if you can tap into your body, and as you've done, identify that you're far better in the morning, and that's going to give you far more than trying to force yourself to do it in the evening, you're probably more likely to keep that routine up, aren't you?
You are, and I think you do need to try different classes.
Yeah,
And there's different
absolutely.
types of yoga. I mean, I like yoga lattes, which is yoga and Pilates, a sort of combination, because it's a bit more movie, it's a bit more sort of dancey, it flows, and I love yoga flow for that flow and that energy. Because I've got to that level now, and I'm really excited that I've got to that level. I'm not a beginner anymore. And there's this journey, isn't there, of, and I'm sure you felt it, of all of a sudden, oh, I can touch my toes. I can do this. I'm doing moves that I didn't think I could do. And I know I certainly couldn't do a few weeks ago. So there's all of that confidence building that comes with the journey of yoga
Yeah.
as well, that I think is just wonderful at any age to do.
And I think that's what's quite nice about fitness. I mean, you don't need to have adopted a fitness program, and I include yoga in that, for very long, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and you really will notice whether it's a different in inches, a different in difference in what the scales show, or how you feel physically or mentally, or even the ability to touch your toes. It's quite easy to see that progression, and hopefully that progression, gives you a sense of achievement and gives you motivation to keep moving forwards.
Spurs you on. It really does spur
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. And do you know what? As someone who, so I've got a class that I taught last night. I've got two people, 172, 178, and they've both gone from having bad backs and not able to touch their toes to actually easily being able to touch toes. So even being of an older persuasion doesn't mean that there's not somewhere to go with your yoga journey, for example.
No,
And I
my
probably should just add as a caveat, sorry, if you've got anything going on with the spine, osteoarthritis, something like that, you should be really cautious touching toes.
yes. Yeah,
Um,
don't watch this and then try and touch your toes.
absolutely.
No, we have a little medical disclaimer here. We're not encouraging anyone to touch their toes. But it's one of those things that, I mean, I watched my grandmother and my mother, they both loved yoga, and my grandmother, still in her 80s, would sit in the lotus position,
Mhm.
just meditate in the lotus position. And I used to be able to sit in the lotus position until I broke my knee. And it was one of those things that it was just a wonderful thing that I grew up with around me. And I think it's wonderful for us as mothers and as women to tap into that with our families. I sometimes sit down with my granddaughter who's 5 and she, what's she doing, Mama? And I say, okay, I'm just going to sit and meditate. Oh, and she's fascinated by what meditation is. And I think it's one of those things that if we can teach the younger generations to tap into their bodies, their minds with yoga, with meditation, then we're actually doing something I think very valuable, because it's something that's not taught. And I think it's one of those things that should be taught to everybody. It's a survival technique at the end of the day for me.
Absolutely. They've done studies where they've had group breathwork practice or group gratitude practice, and they found that I think it was somewhere in Canada they did it, and as a city where they did this study, levels of happiness went up and levels of crime went down because people were calmer. They tapped into the power of meditation. I know that sounds a little bit woo now, but certainly, for anybody who has meditated, I think it's just a way of grounding you back into the present and hopefully just feeling, a little bit calmer, a little bit happier. So certainly bringing it into schools would be such an amazing thing to do. I know some schools are starting to do it. My son's school certainly has yoga on the curriculum as a choice rather than for everybody.
I know when my kids were little, they brought in a yoga specialist to do yoga with, this is primary school, so under 10s. And they, it became quite competitive with the kids. Who could do this? Who could? I think at that age, it wasn't so much the spirituality. They brought it in as almost a sports practice.
Yeah.
In some ways. It was like, look, I can do this and I can do that and I can bend over this. And I go, okay, maybe we need to start gymnastics. But it's one of those things that I think learning to just be at peace with yourself when there's so much going on, and when we're in this age of perimenopause and menopause, and our bodies are going through this huge change, and we know from when we were going through puberty sometimes how vile we were as pubescent teenagers. And I think we're wiser now. I'd like to think we are. And I think things like meditation and yoga and breath work and gratitude and just grounding yourself are so important when the world feels like it's caving in, that it's on top of you. And it's a wonderful way to just switch off and just tap back into what's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely, I guess it is a combination of practicing yoga and meditation on a very regular basis and also not drinking anymore. I definitely feel calmer and happier. I mean, I do sometimes wonder where I would be if I hadn't taken a career change and hadn't, taken the other decisions that I have. I think my body would probably have given in. So I definitely think there's a place for tools like yoga and meditation. And, I guess there's a misconception about both of those things, that they're only for middle-aged white women, for example. I think those tools are for everybody, and if it means that you have to give it a slightly different name, maybe it's just taking time out for yourself and lying on your bed for 10 minutes, or maybe it's just tuning into your breath, it's just being still with yourself. And
I think it's so important to find 10 minutes every day just for you, whatever that looks like, even if it's lighting a candle and just reading a book for 10 minutes, or sitting down with a lovely cup of tea and just breathing, and or looking outside and acknowledging the birds and the trees blowing in the wind, as it's so windy today, or whatever it is. There's just that pause, isn't there? There's a poignant pause that I think is so important to take every day.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of us have grown up being told that we can have it all. And if you've decided to have a family and a career, you very quickly find it's really difficult to have it all. You're doing the juggle constantly, and that juggle is exhausting. And then you hit 40-ish, and as you said, perimenopause kicks in, and suddenly you're fighting against your body as well to keep the stress levels, the adrenaline going up here. I define most women to be able to keep that going without suffering some kind of mental health or physical health trauma. So I think finding time for yourself is really important, however that looks like, whatever that looks like. Um, and being clear that it's not selfish, it's self-care. It's absolutely essential to keep you, fit and well, fit and healthy.
And it's interesting because when we started this conversation, you mentioned about the pain in your shoulder, the pain in your back that was crippling. And more often than not, that's stress. And I
Yeah.
think your body is almost giving you the alarm bells, not at 5 in the morning, but it's giving you the alarm bells to say to you, whoa, just stop. I know whenever I've been on stress overload, my body has been my biggest marker to tell me, hey, just take some time out here.
Yeah.
This is getting too much. So I think we have to listen to our bodies more. I think we're tuned out so much from our bodies. And I think that's the wonderful thing with yoga is you're so in tune with your body. When you're doing things, you're thinking, oh, I didn't feel that twinge before. Last week, all of a sudden, something's happening. The following day, it's like, oh, okay, now it's gone. So it's checking in with your body, and yoga gives you that opportunity to
Yeah.
check in with your body as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there are things that you can do to develop more resilience. So to keep yourself from getting to a point where you're suffering physical or mental health ailments, and looking after yourself, going to the gym or doing some kind of physical activity. So I feel really strongly it doesn't matter what you do as
Yeah.
long as you move your body.
Yes.
So I'm one of
Doesn't have
those
to be
people that
yoga.
I'm one of those people that loves the gym, and I always have done. And I know that I'm really fortunate to have that mindset that I love the gym, but I would hate anybody to be turned off from moving their body because they felt it had to be a prescriptive approach to moving your body. And there's so many different things that you can do now, whether it's walking or mini trampoline or in the gym or, cycling. There are so many different things that you can do. Moving your body
Yeah.
is fantastic, and it will bring you more resilience, as will some of the common sense things that might sound a little bit boring. Drink enough water, get enough sleep, try and have harmonious relationships. But at the end of the day, if things are starting to hurt and you're still reasonably young, and I would argue we are reasonably young, perhaps it's time to look at your lifestyle, look at the way that you're living, and see what changes you can make. And I'm a big fan of not throwing the baby out with bathwater, taking tiny little making tiny little
Baby
baby step
steps.
changes. Absolutely. Don't, if you look at a mountain and you start climbing it and you get 2 days in, you think, oh my goodness, I don't have the right kit, I'm exhausted, I'll leave that for another life. But if you decide that you're just going to walk a couple of kilometers, it becomes a lot more accessible. So baby steps, maybe it's having an extra piece of fruit or vegetables every day, or, adding in an extra 1,000 steps, and being proud of that achievement. It might not feel like a big achievement, but it's going to be more of an achievement than the next person. So
And it's
baby steps towards that
consistency,
journey.
isn't it, Adeline? It's doing those baby steps, but it's doing them consistently.
Yeah.
And I always say to people, it's doing them consistently until it becomes a routine.
Mm-hmm.
And people say, oh, it takes 28 days to get into a routine. It could take you 5 days. It could take you 50 days. You've got to do what's right for you and find the things that make you feel better.
Yeah.
And
And be clear
don't
on.
measure yourself to other people either, because I think that was my biggest thing. As I got into the gym, I saw all these skinny women, and I thought, oh no, it
Mm,
made me feel more depressed at the beginning and more anxious. And then I had a mindset change. And I thought, do you know what? Yeah, I've got things I need to change, but this is step one. This
yeah,
is step one. Just coming here a couple of times a week is step one. And
absolutely.
when I started speaking to the women, they've been doing it years, and they started giving me motivation and helping me to feel good. And I've got, gym buddies, these wonderful women who, hey, haven't seen you for a while. No, I've been traveling. Right, let's get you back onto.
Yeah.
It's lovely. It's that camaraderie that I think also we miss as women, and so many of us work from home now that we miss that connectivity. And I think that is also key, is looking for something, whether if you're with people all the time and you want to recluse, to find something that's a bit one-to-one that's for you. If you miss people, then find something where you feel at home and you feel comfortable with the people that you're surrounding yourself with. It's a double-edged sword for positive ways,
Mm.
actually.
I think we're limited by our imagination more than anything. You know, there are so many ways to get out there and move your body, or stay at home and move your body. The only
Yeah.
limitation is your own imagination. But I think also be really clear on why you're doing something. The example of my sobriety is a good one. I didn't stop drinking to be a non-drinker. I stopped drinking because there were so many benefits I could see in not drinking. And the same with going to the gym. You're not setting your alarm at 6 o'clock to go to the gym so that you can post on social media that you've been to the gym. You're going because you know it's going to make you feel better. It's going to improve the health of your body and of your mind. It's likely going to extend your life expectancy. It might enable you to fit into that beautiful dress. So be clear on what your motivation is, because I think once you understand and recognize your motivation, it becomes so much easier to keep that habit up.
I love that. I love that. And Adeline, you're starting something very exciting, which is an online program to work with
Yes,
people,
I
online
am.
fitness.
Yep.
And how can people get in touch with you if they want to know more of how to work with someone as inspirational as you are?
Thank you. That's really kind. So I'm in the process of rebranding. I'm on social media at Yoga with Adeline. I will soon be coaching with Adeline. And I'm going to be offering online coaching, so support with your fitness journey, with your nutrition, with your state of mind. I'll also be doing online yoga, so one-to-one yoga sessions, a little bit of breath work, meditation. But more than anything, meeting people where they're at. So
Yeah.
rather than coming along with a cookie cutter approach, actually listening to you, understanding where you are, any reservations and apprehensions, what you're trying to achieve, and then working with you to define a program that helps to meet those expectations. So again, I'm very much, if you said to me, look, I hate burpees, I'm not doing them ever, I'm not going to force you to do burpees. And I hate those personal trainers that force you to do burpees, even though you don't want to. They're not great for our pelvic floor anyway. So
Oh, we'll leave pelvic floor for another day. That's a whole other episode. But Adeline, we'll share your details in here. And I
thank
want to
you.
say thank you, because you are an inspiration. Your story is inspiring for others, and I hope other people will get some comfort and get some confidence to make the changes if they feel they need to make changes in their life too, from hearing from your very authentic self, and a place that you're out the other side now, and you're a shining example of how it can be done. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. I think I just the quote that springs to mind: "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step."
It
So as long
does.
as you're taking one step forwards.
Yeah, it really does. Well, thank you, Adeline. And
Thank you.
if you want to get in touch with Adeline, then feel free to follow her on social media, reach out to her. If you're unsure how to, please get in touch with us, and we will certainly pass your details on to Adeline as well. And in the meantime, like and subscribe, Fizz and Tell. We're going to be bringing you lots more wonderful people, just like Adeline, with inspiring stories of women in their 40s and beyond. So thank you very much, Adeline.
Thank you.